What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of the JT Sports Podcast. I'm your host, JT, here with you live on YouTube, X, Facebook. Hope everybody's doing well on this wonderful Monday night. It's the holiday season. It's the reason to be joyful, and I'm so joyful that we are in the closing weeks of the NFL regular season. 2 weeks that luxurious Lombardi trophy. And I want to lead the show off discussing the NFL MVP race because it was believed that Josh Allen had the MVP locked up. Well, this past weekend, I feel like with how well Lamar played against the Steelers and Josh Allen kind of not really playing all that well against the Patriots, Lamar broke the MVP race wide open again. I want to give my new thoughts on who should win MVP. Kyler Murray, how do you guys feel about him? Because I don't think he gets talked about enough. But to me, in terms of talent and athleticism, the only quarterback who is remotely as good as what Kyler is Lamar Jackson, which Lamar Jackson is in a different class athletically than Kyler Murray. But in terms of Kyler's mobility, great athlete, has a really live arm despite being undersized. And I've always felt like Kyler Murray has been really underrated for the majority of his career, but these last couple of weeks, the Arizona Cardinals have lost a good amount of games. They recently got knocked out of playoff contention by the Carolina Panthers, and a large reason for that was due to Kyler Murray's inconsistent play, and he's glitching out right now. So I got some thoughts on Kyler Murray. The NFC North, I believe, one out of the season, as we know, they have no shot at making it to the playoffs with their loss to the Dolphins. And even before that game kicked the Chiefs, he had a really horrific injury. I mean, his teammate runs into his knee on a touchdown catch, and his leg pretty much snaps in half. It was really gruesome to watch. CJ Stroud was coming. This was something that you would see in a horror film. I got some takes on Tank Dell's injury, how it affects the Texans moving forward as we near the playoffs, and the recent move to counteract Tank Dell's injury. The Patriots, I think they're in a really disturbing spot right now. And the Raiders got their third win of the season against Jacksonville, but not all wins are good wins. You can take a loss and a win at the same time. And the Carolina Panthers, it looks like they are now starting to turn the corner. There is finally reasons to be optimistic about the future of this franchise if you're a Panthers fan. Shout out to everybody that's tuned in wherever you're watching. Smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, hit that bell icon if you're new so you don't miss when we drop new content, when we go live. Remember that you can find this episode wherever you get your podcast from, Apple, Spotify, Amazon. The JT Sports Podcast is available. The links are down in the description down below. Make sure to give us a follow on Instagram at JT Sports _ and on X at JT Sports __. And let's dive into it. Now, a week ago, after Josh Allen's fantastic performance against the Detroit Lions, I felt like he locked up the MVP award. I felt like the MVP award, the race was officially over, but after this past weekend, with how well Lamar Jackson played and the Ravens win over the Steelers, he threw 3 touchdowns in that game. Josh Allen and the Bills kind of struggled to beat the New England Patriots. I feel like Lamar has now made this MVP race more complicated because he just broke it wide open again. This is no longer a award that is locked up by Josh Allen. Lamar has just as good as a chance to win it as what he does. And although Josh Allen is the favorite to win it still, I don't get how you can continue to deny how great Lamar Jackson has been this year. This is the best season that Lamar Jackson has had in his whole entire career. And that's saying something because he's a two-time MVP award winner, but yet this season is better than his previous two MVP years. I mean, the level of efficiency that Lamar Jackson is playing with is really similar to prime Aaron Rodgers. When he won MVP 4 times throughout his career, his seasons that he won the award resembles what Lamar Jackson is on pace to do this year. He probably is going to finish with 40 or more touchdowns through the air. He probably is also going to come close to hitting 1,000 rushing yards. He won't hit that number exactly, but he'll be around 800, a little bit shy of 900. And looking at Aaron Rodgers' 2021 MVP season, 37 touchdowns to 4 interceptions. In 2020, he had 48 touchdowns, only 5 interceptions. We've never seen a quarterback exhibit this level of efficiency like we've seen out of Lamar Jackson since Aaron Rodgers. And as good as how Josh Allen has played this season, especially the last month, I mean, the numbers and the statistics back up Lamar Jackson winning this award. However, the hypocrisy, like I pointed out last week, is that last year Josh Allen had better numbers than Lamar. But he got the award anyway because despite Josh Allen having a better statistical season, Lamar's team overall had the better record and they performed better. Well, this season, the Buffalo Bills have a better record than the Baltimore Ravens. Although the Ravens beat them head-to-head, they beat the Kansas City Chiefs. They are the only team to have a win over that squad, unlike the Ravens who lost to them in Week 1, and they beat the Detroit Lions. But at this point, I kind of feel like you have to look at this season as an outlier year because technically the MVP award goes to the player whose team had the best record out of all of the MVP candidates. But this season, though, I don't really feel like record is a strong enough reason to give Lamar Jackson, or not give Lamar Jackson his third MVP award over Josh Allen. You can say that I'm flip-flopping because last week I felt like Josh Allen should win it despite how many great numbers Lamar puts up. But what Lamar Jackson is doing is just historical. We are never going to see a player have this kind of season ever again in terms of what he's doing on the ground and how efficient he's been throwing that pigskin. And we got to start calling Lamar Jackson the most talented quarterback in NFL history. I don't think that's a bold take. If I were to ask you, who in the history of this game has had the elite athleticism that Lamar possesses alongside of the ability to win from within the pocket, you can't name anybody. Lamar Jackson doesn't deserve to be compared to Michael Vick. Michael Vick is nowhere close to what Lamar Jackson was. Lamar Jackson is in a different universe than what Michael Vick was as a player. He's in a different universe than what Josh Allen is as a player. Lamar Jackson has been the best quarterback in the NFL this season. And pound for pound, I think Lamar Jackson personally is the most talented quarterback that ever played this game. This brother is having an all-time historic season that we probably won't see another quarterback have again. Hell, I don't even know if Lamar Jackson will be able to replicate the season that he's having right now in the future, because he's going to throw for over 40 touchdowns and has under 5 interceptions. If you look at all of Lamar's interceptions this year, most of them were not on him. If we were to make interceptions be liable by wide receivers dropping passes or having balls flying through their hands, Lamar probably has only thrown 1 or 2 interceptions. His decision making, his accuracy, his efficiency has been on top of anybody else in the league this year in terms of quarterback play. This is an all-time great season now we are witnessing out of Lamarvelous right now. And the only way that you can truly honor a historic season like this is by giving Lamar Jackson his third MVP award. As good as how Josh Allen has played this year, he's been really efficient as well. He has 38 total touchdowns. He is not touching the eye scale of what Lamar is doing right now. Do y'all not understand the greatness that we are seeing out of Lamar? Because I don't think we are ever going to see another quarterback exhibit this level of quarterback play in the season ever again. Well, they're just killing you through the air and they're killing you on the ground. How do you stop Lamar Jackson? You can't. You can only pray to God that you can contain him. That's the only way. Josh Allen has been stopped this year. He got stopped by the Baltimore Ravens. And I get it that the Ravens have had some ugly losses to some bad teams. The Browns, the Raiders. I understand that. But those losses still don't negate the overall big picture of this year, which is Lamar Jackson having a historic level of efficiency. Do you know that Lamar is on pace to break the NFL single season record for passer rating in a year? I mean, this brother has just been miles better than anybody else in the league playing this position. And every time I tell people Lamar's better than Patrick Mahomes, they get really upset. It shouldn't be a hot take anymore. If you were to take championships and accolades out of this argument when we compare Mahomes to Lamar and we are just going off who's the more talented quarterback, Lamar wins that debate. There are so many things that Lamar can do that Patrick Mahomes wish he could do. But there's not a single thing that Mahomes can do that Lamar can't if we're just talking about a pure skill set standpoint. Lamar Jackson has broken down barriers. He has changed the definition of what it means to be a dual threat quarterback. Why you think Anthony Richardson, Justin Fields have been drafted so high? Because everybody wants to have the next Lamar, and a lot of head coaches, a lot of general managers are going to get fired because what they are trying to find, they will never be able to, because you cannot replicate a Lamar Jackson. Do you know how rare it is for somebody to be this good running the ball and this good throwing the ball? He can kill you any kind of way, which makes him truly unstoppable. Lamar Jackson is what you would get if you were creating a quarterback on Madden and you maxed out all his stats: 99 speed, 99 agility, 99 throw power with 99 accuracy. This is Lamar Jackson. This is the scariest quarterback that ever played this game and the most talented that ever touched a football. We are never going to see another season like this for another quarterback ever again at this position. Well, maybe we will in the next century or so, but Lamar Jackson right now is going down in the history books. And as good as how Josh Allen has played this year, he's also an all-time great quarterback talent in his own right. But right now, Lamar Jackson is up here and everybody is down here. Okay, I mean, you just can't deny how great Lamar has been this year. You can't even use the running back jokes anymore. If you're still calling Lamar Jackson a running back, then brother, you're just a flat out hater and you just disrespect the game of football, because it's disrespectful to deny the greatness of Lamar. If you love the game of football like me, you truly can't do nothing but admire what we're witnessing down there in Baltimore. I get jealous every time I watch my Steelers play the Ravens because I wish we would have drafted Lamar Jackson instead of Terrell Edmonds. And if you can be unbiased, you probably wish your team had Lamar Jackson at quarterback too, because who wouldn't? This brother is fun to watch, and he is an incredible quarterback talent. You got to give him MVP this year. And I know a week ago I was just on here yelling for Josh Allen to win it in spite of the numbers that Lamar has put up. But the more I watch Lamar and the more I look at these numbers, I just have a hard time sleeping at night knowing that there's a chance this all-time great season that Lamar Jackson is having, statistics-wise, efficiency-wise, it may go down in history without an MVP award. It would be overlooked. It would be overshadowed. And I know it's hypocritical because last year Josh Allen had better stats. But every year it's a different season. The criteria should change, and it should be based off a year-to-year basis. And based off what Lamar Jackson has done or what Lamar Jackson has done this year, he deserves this award. This dude is breaking down the barrier. It's just like when you thought he could get no better, he gets even better. I never thought that we would see him have a better year than what he did his first time winning this award when he had 36 passing touchdowns and led the NFL in passing touchdowns that year, by the way. And instead, this brother a few years later is about to throw 40-plus touchdowns. He could damn near have 50 total touchdowns when it's all said and done, when you account what he's going to do in the regular season and in the playoffs. Give Lamar Jackson the MVP. This race is far from finished. I'm not saying that Lamar Jackson is a lock to win it, but it's wide open right now. These last 2 weeks are going to decide who wins this award. If the Bills can get the 1 seed, it makes this debate even more complicated. And Josh Allen is doing some great things, but Lamar Jackson right now has just been on a different level. Shout out to everybody that's tuned in. Shout out to my guy, Abidi Hassan. He says, bro, let's give Josh Allen the MVP. Jackson don't care about the MVP. He's just going to bring the Super Bowl to Baltimore. 18 interceptions doesn't. Hey, Brett Favre had years when he had hella interceptions and won MVP. Just because you throw a lot of interceptions doesn't disclude you from being in the conversation for being considered the most valuable player. Because in spite of all of Josh Allen's interceptions last season, if you replace him with Mitchell Trubisky, are the Bills still the same team? Patrick Mahomes beat Lamar Jackson, beat Josh Allen. Hey, Josh Allen beat Patrick Mahomes this season. He's the only player to be able to do so. I'm just saying. Lamar Jackson is just on a different level this year. If they give it to Josh Allen, I wouldn't be mad at them. But at the same time, I kind of would be like, well, damn, like, look what Lamar has done this year. Hell, if the Bengals were to make it to the postseason, Joe Burrow has an argument. But the Bengals probably won't make it to the playoffs, so therefore, you really can't talk about how good of a season Joe Burrow is having. But for Lamar Jackson to have over 40-plus passing touchdowns and only 4 to 5 interceptions is a remarkable feat. This is what peak Aaron Rodgers was doing, people. This is an all-time great level of efficiency that we are seeing out of the greatest dual-threat quarterback to ever play this game, and it has to be recognized. If Lamar doesn't win MVP this year, people are easily going to forget how insane of a season this is for Lamar. And it shouldn't happen. After this year, they should put one of Lamar Jackson's jerseys, cleats, whatever, in Canton. Because this season needs to be honored. We have never seen a quarterback have this dominant of a season when it comes to running the ball, but also throwing the football with a high level of efficiency, precision, and accuracy. Listen, I agree with my guy, Road Chuck 52. He says, I really say they should make it co-MVP this season. They did it with Peyton and Steve McNair. They just might have to because, listen, last week, people in the comment section were calling me a Lamar hater. I'm far from a Lamar hater. If anything, I've been one of the OG Lamar believers. When I first came on this platform and first started making videos, one of my first ever videos was how Lamar Jackson was going to revolutionize the quarterback position. And he's done that. For every Lamar, you got Justin Fields, Jaden Daniels, Anthony Richardson. Teams are taking swings and rolling the dice on these super uber athletic quarterbacks in hopes of being able to develop the next Lamar Jackson. People are trying to find this because they recognize how hard it is to beat you when you have this kind of quarterback. I wouldn't be against making this a co-MVP year because both Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson have rights to this award because they both have been playing really high level football. They've been the two best quarterbacks in the league this year, but Lamar Jackson to me just has somewhat of an advantage over Josh Allen with the numbers that he's putting up at the level of efficiency that he's playing with. Now, the next thing I want to talk about, I believe whoever wins the Super Bowl this year is going to come out of the NFC North. This, without a doubt, no argument needed. It's the best division in the NFL this season. The Lions, the Vikings are potentially going to be playing for the right to have a first-round bye and the number one seed in the NFC come playoff time. And the Green Bay Packers are no slouch neither. They're good enough to beat Detroit, Minnesota if they face them in the playoffs as well. You can make an argument that the NFC North has 3 of the top 5 teams in the sport right now. Both Minnesota and Green Bay have great defenses playing at a top 10 level. They're well coached, but they also have really potent offenses. The Detroit Lions, on the other hand, though, they have the best offense out of anybody in this division. They got the best offense in the NFL, in my opinion. But with all of the injuries that they have on defense, they're not as good as what Minnesota and Green Bay are on that side of the ball. But you don't really need your defense to be that good when you're capable of hanging 30, 45 points on anybody you play in the postseason with ease, with how spectacular of a play caller Ben Johnson is as offensive coordinator. You got Jared Goff, who also is in the MVP discussion. Although he's not in the same tier as what Josh Allen and Lamar is, he's not too far off. You got all these weapons, Jahmyr Gibbs, David Montgomery, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Sam Laporta, Jameson Williams is having a breakout season. You got a top 3 offensive line. The Detroit Lions have everything needed to make a Super Bowl run this year other than having a healthy defense. If they had about 5 out of 10 guys that they have on injury reserve able to play come playoff time, then I would pick them to win it all. They would be a home run hitter for me. But Minnesota and Green Bay are one of the 2 teams that could exploit the Detroit Lions' biggest weaknesses. Because the Vikings, the Packers, on any given day, they can go toe-to-toe, point for point with the Detroit Lions. I really don't see any other team in the NFC outside of maybe the Philadelphia Eagles being able to knock off any of these 3 teams come playoff time. And the reason why I feel like one of these 3 squads are going to end up winning it all is because they are all around complete outside of Detroit. But even then, Detroit still is a well-coached team with Aaron Glenn. He's going to end up being a future head coach. Everybody talks about Ben Johnson and him becoming a head coach next year. Aaron Glenn's going to be getting a good amount of head coaching interviews. Really high character coach. Players love him, and he gets the best out of what he has to work with. Hell, the Lions may be giving up hella points, but at times their defense is good to get a big-time turnover or a big-time stop in the biggest moment when it's necessary. But Minnesota, Green Bay, and Detroit from top to bottom, when they're fully healthy, have 3 of the best rosters in the NFL. They don't really have a lot of weaknesses. And in terms of the NFC, outside of Philadelphia, nobody else is stopping any of these 3 teams. The Rams don't have a shot. The Buccaneers or the Falcons, whoever wins that crapshoot of a division, if they got to face any of these 3 teams, they automatically are losing. Somebody out this division is going to win it all this year. I don't see how it doesn't happen. With the Minnesota Vikings, we've been having a hard time believing that this level of play that Sam Darnold has been performing at is going to eventually fade away, but it hasn't. He's continued to play at a high level for the majority of this season. Yeah, he had a little bit of a slump during the middle portion of the year, but he's bounced back from that in a major way. Kevin O'Connell, without a doubt, should be head coach of the year. because nobody expected to see a career resurgence out of Sam Darnold. What about the Green Bay Packers? Matt LaFleur did a really good job of being able to win games with Malik Willis. Remember him when everybody thought he was a bust? He would no longer play in the NFL anymore after he got cut by Tennessee. Could you imagine losing Jordan Love early during the season? You're a Packers fan and you're hearing the news that Malik Willis is going to have to start a few games for you. Everybody probably thought that the Packers season was over at that point, but yet Matt LaFleur was still able to find a way to win because he was able to build a scheme on the fly around Malik Willis' strengths. Never thought that would have been possible with how bad Malik Willis looked when he was playing for the Tennessee Titans. And I mean, the Detroit Lions are the prime example of why good coaching in this sport matters, why injuries are not an excuse for having a disappointing season. I mean, they continue to roll guys from off the street on defense, and they still find ways to win. That's coaching. That's culture. All three of these teams meet the criteria for what you're looking for out of a possible team that could knock off Kansas City. They come through in the fourth quarter. How many times have we seen the Vikings have to come from behind late in games and pull off a win behind Sam Darnold's arms? There's been a few occasions. I mean, same thing with the Green Bay Packers. Same thing with the Detroit Lions. When you are judging teams and you're trying to evaluate how far they can go in the playoffs, the most important factors in that isn't just talent. It's also the coaching. It also is your ability to perform when you're down in the face of adversity the final 15 minutes. Somebody out this division, mark my words, screen record it, screenshot it, do whatever you got to do. But somebody out of the NFC North this season is going to win the Super Bowl. I don't think Kansas City wants to play any of these three teams. You definitely don't want to play Dan Campbell because Dan Campbell is liable to put it all on the line. He may go for 2-3 onside kicks in the Super Bowl against Kansas City. He may go for it every single time on fourth down against Kansas City. This dude has big balls, and he's not afraid to let them hang. The Minnesota Vikings are one of the most well-coached teams in the league. Do you think Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid want to go up against a Brian Flores coached defense? Same thing the Green Bay Packers. The Green Bay Packers are a complete team on all three phases. Special teams, offense, defense. The NFC North has 3 of the 5 best teams in the league right now. Somebody is going to end up winning the Lombardi Trophy from up out of this division. I don't really know who it is per se. If I was a betting man, I would put my money on Green Bay. But you can't count out the Lions or Minnesota. This is an incredibly stacked division, and somebody is going to win it all from out of it. My guy Eddie Paludo says, now the main man takes it away. My guy Zanger says, how can people say Allen had better stats last year? Because he did have better numbers last year. He had more touchdowns. He had more yards. The only thing that Josh Allen had more than Lamar was interceptions. And his team didn't have as good as a record as what Lamar had. I don't know how many of you guys pay attention to Kyler Murray from a national... can't talk today. I don't know how many of you guys pay attention to Kyler Murray from a national standpoint, but how do you guys feel about him? Because to me, Kyler Murray has always been one of the most talented quarterbacks in the league. In my opinion, probably the second most talented, right behind Lamar Jackson in terms of athletic ability and arm strength. He's one of the greatest athletes to play in the NFL. And, you know, over the last 5 games, the Arizona Cardinals have really struggled. And so has Kyler Murray. And over this stretch, where they've lost 4 out of their last 5 since they started out 6-4, Kyler Murray has went from underrated to overrated within that span because he may be the NFL's most inconsistent quarterback in the league. Probably the league's most talented inconsistent quarterback because he has a tendency to start the season off playing really good football, right? But then once you get to the midway point and so forth, his play starts to decline. Prime example, his first 8 games this season, he had 11 touchdowns to 3 interceptions. He was in the MVP conversation. Remember, it was Lamar, Josh Allen, Saquon, and Kyler, along with Jared Goff. But ever since his hot start to the year, he's been really off. 5 touchdowns to 6 interceptions. It just seems like Kyler Murray, when he gets into the later months of the season, he starts to hit a wall. At first, when this was starting to happen, people were blaming Cliff Kingsbury for it. Oh, it's Cliff Kingsbury's system. It's his play calling. But we've seen Jaden Daniels still play really well in the second half this year, despite Cliff Kingsbury being his offensive coordinator. So at this point, you really can't point the finger at the coaching anymore. Eventually, if you're a Cardinals fan, you have to say, okay, how much of this is the coaching and how much of this is just Kyler Murray just falling off in the second half of the season? Because if Arizona is going to be a playoff team in the near future, you need Kyler Murray to play way better in the second half than what he has done in the past. Because the NFL is not about how you start. It's about how you finish. You want to play your best football after the week of Thanksgiving. Kyler Murray does the complete opposite. He tends to play his best football early and his worst football late. You rather Kyler Murray struggle the first 9 games and play on fire the last 8-9 games of the season, because that's when it matters the most. Your last 2 months is when you're trying to make that playoff push. And here we find ourselves with the Arizona Cardinals getting eliminated from playoff contention by Bryce Young and the Carolina Panthers, which was a game where Bryce Young outplayed Kyler Murray, by the way. Kyler Murray was playing good up until the final 15 minutes of that game. You know, he had a really costly interception in the second half when he's rolling outside the pocket, and I don't know what he was thinking trying to make that pass, but, he threw it right to the defender pretty much. You would have thought that he might have mistaken that defensive back as one of his receivers. The decision-making, especially late in games out of Kyler Murray, is incredibly infuriating to watch at times. And you can also blame Drew Pretzing, the Cardinals' current offensive coordinator, for why the offense has been wonky down the stretch. But Arizona has just been a hot and cold team all year long. But Kyler Murray has kind of been, what I like to say, a little bit glitchy. You know, when he was playing great football, he didn't have any glitches. But during down the stretch these last couple of weeks, he's been glitching out. And when you watch Kyler Murray, you can see the best and the worst of him in only one play. You know that play when he threw that interception against Carolina. He avoids the rush. He gets outside the pocket. You see this really good athlete. And then you see him a few seconds later, after making a good play to extend and buy time for guys to get open, he makes a boneheaded decision. That's the Kyler Murray experience. It's just a roller coaster. It's just a wave of emotions that goes up and down every time you watch Arizona play with him at the helm. And I'm not saying that Kyler Murray doesn't have what it takes to be a franchise quarterback. Because as I said earlier, along with Lamar Jackson, Kyler Murray is one of the greatest athletes that the NFL has seen play this quarterback position. Especially with him not really meeting positional norms. You normally don't see a quarterback this small having this level of success. And Kyler Murray isn't a bad quarterback, but at this point, I can't say that he's a good quarterback. So where would you rank Kyler Murray? Right now, if we were to rank every quarterback that starts from best to worst, where would Kyler Murray kind of rank? Because I kind of feel like he's around that 13th to 15th range. It's kind of like I put him in the same place that I will put Dak Prescott in. When he's on, I want him on my team. But when he's off, you can't win with him. And I don't think it has anything to do with character issues. You feel me? I think it has to do more with the limitations that comes with playing at his small frame, with that small size. He still isn't that good throwing in the middle of the field. He really can't scan the entirety of the field neither. Kyler Murray as athletically gifted as what he is, which is what you need to be to succeed at quarterback with that small size, you can still see those limitations hurt Arizona late during the season. And the only way you can win with a quarterback like Kyler Murray and you can sustain his consistent level of play throughout the entirety of the year is if you have a really good offensive coordinator. Drew Pretzing doesn't meet that mold for a guy who could bring the best out of Kyler. If Arizona is ever going to make a deep playoff run, you got to have like a Ben Johnson kind of offensive coordinator, because not everybody can be successful coaching a quarterback that's as talented as what Kyler Murray is, but has limitations. I never understood why the Arizona Cardinals have snaps that involves Kyler Murray having to receive underneath center. With how short he is, he should primarily be playing out of the pistol, out of the shotgun for 95% of the offensive possessions. I don't get some of the schematics that Drew Pretzing likes to use when it comes to getting everything out of Kyler. I think that Kyler Murray would be better off if you had an offensive coordinator that had a scheme that closely resembled a little bit of what Cliff Kingsbury liked to do, or a little bit of what Lincoln trying to bring, a little bit of that scheme and kind of mix it a little bit in with the NFL, similar to how the Ravens have done with their hiring of Todd Monken. Remember, when he replaced Greg Roman, he was coming from Georgia, who had won back-to-back national championships with Stetson Bennett at quarterback. And Todd Monken, he runs a hybrid of what is a spread college offense, but it also has NFL concepts built into it. And if Arizona can kind of find their version of Todd Monken, I think that's what could bring the best out of Kyler Murray the final 2 months of the season, because that's why he glitches out. You really don't have an offensive mind that is creative enough to continue to reinvent the wheel, to continue to sustain the high level of play that we've seen out of Kyler Murray. Because from a skill set standpoint, Kyler Murray can play in any kinds of weather conditions. He has a pretty strong arm for his size. He is really accurate, and he's an incredible athlete. He runs like 4.3, 4.4. The dude could be playing baseball right now in the major leagues. So I don't think it's a talent thing with Kyler. I think that with his size limitations, his short stature, you kind of have to get an offensive coordinator that just specializes at being able to get the most out of a guy like Kyler Murray. Let's continue on. Last season, the 49ers came really close to beating Patrick Mahomes and the Kansas City Chiefs. And a few months later, they find themselves eliminated from playoff contention. And it looks like the Super Bowl hangover has killed the 49ers 2024 campaign. You had all of the distractions with the Brandon Ayuk contract saga. Was he going to get traded? Was he going to stay with the team? Were they going to cave to his demands? Well, the 49ers finally caved to Brandon Ayuk's contract demands. They're able to kind of find a compromise, offer him to get injured early during the season. Not just do you lose Brandon Ayuk due to injury, but the same thing happened to Trent Williams. And Brandon Ayuk wasn't the only person who the 49ers were in a standoff with when it came to contract negotiations. Trent Williams was also kind of holding his hand out before the season, looking to get paid a little bit more. And then he comes back, and then boom, he gets injured again. And then you got Christian McCaffrey, who gets injured, which I think his injury is more due to him being on the cover of Madden. Listen, I'm not somebody that believes in superstitions, but when it comes to the Madden curse, I believe that thing is to be taken seriously, because most of everybody that's on the cover of Madden, they always end up going out the worst of ways. Not everybody has the voodoo magic that Mahomes and Brady have to overcome the Madden curse. And with Christian McCaffrey, being viewed as an injury-prone player for pretty much the entirety of his career. As soon as he was on the cover of Madden, I knew not to draft him in fantasy football. I don't know why anybody else wouldn't take that red flag, but I was not about to gamble investing the first overall pick in the fantasy league on a guy that has the injury history like Chris McCaffrey does, coupled with the possibility of him falling victim to the Madden curse, which he definitely is now a victim of. And the injury bug just destroyed the 49ers this year. But injuries aren't the complete reason why they have fallen victim to the infamous Super Bowl hangover, because, listen, a sore subject is Brock Purdy. Everybody knows that Brock Purdy was Mr. Irrelevant. He has overachieved up to this point. Can he continue to play good football? Like, is this man just too good to be true? Is he eventually going to come back down to earth? Well, this season, he's come back down to earth in a major way, because let's just be honest, Brock Purdy has regressed tremendously when you compare how good he was his first season and how good he was last year during the 49ers Super Bowl run to this season. He's not good taking care of the football. He's not clutch at all. Like, if a game is on the line and Brock Purdy has the ball in his hands with an opportunity to win it, it seems like he always folds. He never comes through. And he's not good throwing the ball from outside the pocket. He's not really good on the run. He has good mobility. He can extend plays and pick up a little bit of yards with his legs. He's not Kyler or Lamar, but he has enough athleticism that you got to account for it. If you give him a little bit of green grass, then he can kill you for at least 10, maybe 15 yards. But he's not somebody that is good at making a lot of throws with accuracy off platform, on the move, because it seems like every time Brock Purdy and Kyle Shanahan, regardless of him being one of the greatest minds in NFL history, you know, when it comes to offense, I don't think there are too many better offensive minds than Kyle Shanahan that have entered the league in the last decade. But this year, he's in a slump. He has had situations where late in games, the 49ers have given up leads due to him having bad situational football. His play calling has declined. Maybe he needs to look at handing over play calling duties this offseason, because the red zone production has dropped tremendously. This season, the 49ers are 24th in red zone scoring. Last year during the Super Bowl run, they had the best red zone offense. And it's not only because of the injury to Christian McCaffrey why the red zone production has dropped off, but Brock Purdy not being able to take care of the football hasn't helped that. And Kyle Shanahan just not really calling the right plays once he gets inside the red zone area. And the offensive line has been terrible. I mean, when you're a really good offensive mind, you believe that you can win with anybody. You don't need to invest in the offensive line high in the draft to be able to still run your offense, because your offense is still kind of predicated based off the scheme more so than it is the talent of the player. So therefore, if you're a good chess player, you can win despite not having a king and queen as opposed to the other player. But that still doesn't mean that you can win a game with basic chess pieces. You know, you still got to have a couple of special chess pieces here and there to be able to still give yourself a chance of winning. Although you may be really good at strategically winning despite not having the necessary pieces that somebody else does, you still need to have certain pieces in order to win. And that's Kyle Shanahan. Regardless of how good of an offensive mind he is, regardless of him being able to elevate lower level players, you still need to have a strong baseline for your offense to be super efficient. He kind of has been a little bit cocky this year because the 49ers knew that their offensive line was a huge issue going in the last offseason. That was the number one question about this team, was how are they going to address that offensive line? And they didn't really do anything to improve it. And therefore, you come into this year where every time Brock Purdy drops back, the brother's running for his life. And you know he doesn't play that well outside the pocket. So it's not all on Brock Purdy while the 49ers have struggled. It's on Kyle Shanahan. It's on John Lynch for ignoring the glaring holes that they had at several positions on the offensive line. And how about the defense? Because remember, after they lost the Super Bowl, they scapegoated Steve Wilkes. The players ain't really like him. You know, they were doing a lot of different things that they haven't done in the past when they had the Miko Ryans and Robert Saleh. Steve Wilkes was kind of handicapped because he had to appease the players. They had to buy into a system that he was running that was a little bit similar to what they've had success with in the past, and it didn't work out, but the defense was still elite in my opinion. This year, you get rid of Steve Wilkes, you promote a guy from within, and the defense has gotten even worse. And Nick Bosa, you know, when he's on the field, he doesn't look like he deserves to be paid the money that he's receiving. He's paid like a premium edge rusher. When you think of some of the best pass rushers in the game, TJ Watt, Myles Garrett, even Michael Parsons, do you even think Nick Bosa anymore? Because I watch the 49ers and I keep asking myself, like, where is Nick Bosa at? Where is one of the best pass rushers in the league at? Oftentimes I watch the 49ers and the guys are no-show. I don't feel his presence anymore. And when you used to watch the 49ers, what made their defense so great was how good they used to be on the defensive line. But over the years, they've slowly had to let guys walk away. Like, you give away DeForest Buckner to the Indianapolis Colts. Arik Armstead leaves in free agency for the Jacksonville Jaguars, you know, and eventually your defensive line loses a little bit of the muster that made it so great when you made those 2 Super Bowl runs, like when you lost with Jimmy Garoppolo against the Chiefs in 2019, and when you recently lost them last year. You arguably had the best defensive line in the NFL during those 2 seasons that you lost to the Chiefs. And yet this year, your defensive line has kind of been a little bit of your Achilles heel. The 49ers' inability to dominate the line of scrimmage has really costed them this season on both sides of the football. Kyle Shanahan, he's been in a decline in terms of his coaching. I'm not saying that Kyle Shanahan is outdated, but, you know, every good coach has to be able to adapt. And it seems like Kyle Shanahan is just so stuck in his ways that watch film and game plan for you. And obviously, your defenses are kind of now starting to figuring out how to stop it, which is why you got to adjust. Blown out on several occasions. I mean, the 49ers this season, they just had too much going against them to overcome the infamous Super Bowl hangover. I mean, it gave off weird vibes in the offseason with the beef they had with Brandon Ayuk in terms of trading him or deciding to extend him. And that kind of gave off a little bit of a red flag, but I ignored it. I was like, you know, this is the 49ers. This is contract negotiations for every team, but something about the Ayuk 49ers situation just gave off that, you know, this thing isn't probably going to end well. And I didn't even touch on Deebo Samuel, but it's like if you had Brandon Ayuk there, Deebo Samuel would be much better. Deebo Samuel is not one of those traditional wide receivers where you line him up on the outside and he's going to eat. He's one of those wide receivers that is only good in a specific role. And the role that Kyle Shanahan has for Deebo in his offense is perfect when you have an elite wide receiver on the perimeter that's good at running routes, creating separation, forcing the defense to have to key in on him and George Kittle versus just keying in on George Kittle's and Deebo Samuel. Deebo Samuel's not good at creating separation and running routes the way that Brandon Ayuk does. I remember a few years ago, and a lot of y'all probably remember this too. Remember when people used to make the argument about Deebo Samuel being the better wide receiver between him and Ayuk? And a lot of people kind of, you know, overlooked how more fundamentally and technically sound Brandon Ayuk was compared to Deebo Samuel. That's because Brandon Ayuk isn't an incredibly flashy player. It's fun to watch a guy like Deebo Samuel run everybody over, blow past people. He's a great athlete, really physical player for his position. But certain players are only as good as the players around them. Deebo Samuel is like Robin. Robin's at his best when he has Batman. When Robin's on a solo mission, it may not go as well as planned if he had Batman there. And that's Deebo Samuel. And Deebo Samuel also has kind of fallen off a little bit. Now, last week against the Dolphins, they lost that game. That's the best he's looked all season. Maybe he kind of went back to the fountain of youth. He went to Lazarus Pit, and he got revived again. But, I mean, Deebo Samuel is a far cry from what he used to be. And Kyle Shanahan's trying to force feed him the ball to appease him and thinks that Deebo Samuel is the key to getting the offense going when it's really not. You got to find a wide receiver that's more nuanced at playing the position of what Deebo is, because I've never viewed Deebo as a great receiver. I've always felt like he's been overrated. Even when he had his all-pro season, people try to say he was a top 5, top 10 receiver. I used to be like, hell no, like Deebo Samuel is a top 10 athlete in the NFL. You can move him around, play him at running back. You can move him in the slot. He can play a little bit on the outside, but he's not a primary receiver. He's a bona fide gadget player in the sense. So the 49ers this year, there were just so many problems that they had before the season even started that you felt this was going to get a little bit weird. And even when they went to the Super Bowl last year with the falling out they had with Steve Wilkes, they kind of were leaking oil then. So the Super Bowl hangover really killed the 49ers this year. So this past Saturday, I was watching the Houston Texans play the Kansas City Chiefs, and I had Tank Dell on my fantasy team. It's the playoffs, so I was watching that thing very closely, and I was so happy to see Tank Dell catch that touchdown early in the third quarter. And eventually, my happiness turned into straight horror when I watched his teammate, Xavier Hutchinson, crash into his knee, and his leg just snapped in half. Like, I almost threw up watching it. And I almost threw up in my mouth when they showed the replay of it, because it was just so gruesome to watch. Because Tank Dell is very small. He's only like 5'8", 165, maybe 175 pounds. And to just see his kneecap just snap the way that it did, it looked like when you break a toothpick in half. It was one of the most horrific injuries that I've ever seen in all my years watching and playing football, because this isn't the first time I've started praying and then he goes up close to him and he starts breaking down, starts crying, and you got all these experts, all these hardcore former football players, quote, quote, former football players who saying, man, CJ Stroud got to be tougher. Like, CJ Stroud got to be able to lock in after this. Let me tell you guys something. When you play football, yes, everybody has to have a certain mentality about the game. If one of your teammates gets injured, you got to have a next play mentality. You can't let it affect you mentally. But certain injuries are just hard to get over. I remember my freshman year playing high school football. First day of week, ever got passed, by the way. I had my homeboy. We were receivers at the time. We were doing one-on-ones. You know how it is when you do your conditioning, you do your stations, and then you have 45 minutes of individual drills. Then you do team-specific drills. So we doing one-on-ones. Cornerback, wide receiver lines up. You got to get off press coverage. You feel me? Get open, catch the pass. Well, my homie, this is the first time we do one-on-ones in pads. And he goes up, he runs a back shoulder fade route, and he comes back down awkwardly on his left leg. And you just hear, and it was pretty loud too. You just heard, next thing you know, he's on the ground and his kneecap is on the other side of his leg. And he's crying. He said, coach, and the team and everybody else, including me, we're just looking at this thing horrified. We're just like, oh. Some guys even throwing up, by the way. Some guys are kind of tearing up, because it's like, when you see certain injuries like this, where you see a bone sticking out or a joint dislocated in a spot that is not supposed to be, that's not your normal injury. And for certain people, that might be their first time ever seeing a joint or a bone in a place that is not supposed to be. That's unnatural. To see somebody's leg or to see somebody's kneecap pop out of place, it's very traumatizing. I remember I used to know somebody whose kneecap used to pop out of place all the time, and he just used to pop it back in with ease and keep on playing. Y'all ever knew somebody like that? Like, they could pop their shoulder out of place, pop it back in, pop their knee out of place, and pop that thing back in and continue on with their day with no issue? Well, not everybody is built like that. And to see Tank Dell's leg just get split in half, like, it looked like he got split into. It looked like his leg was hanging off his body. That is a scary sight. That is disgusting. And you truly have to play the game of football and witness an injury that severe to understand just horrific of a scene you're looking at. Because looking at it on TV, I promise you, is not the same as looking at it happen in live action. It's really disturbing. This is something that you could only cook up in a horror movie. Now, since this injury has occurred, their head coach, D'Amico Ryans for the Texans, has came out and said that he's done for the season. His kneecap is dislocated, plus he's torn his ACL, and this is the second time that Tank Dell's season has got cut short, especially in the final months, due to friendly fire from a teammate. I don't think that him being small has anything to do with his durability, because all of his injuries have kind of occurred in the same place. When he broke his tibia last year, or his fibula, whatever you call it, fibula, it came because somebody rolled on his ankle. And this year, he gets injured because his teammate runs into him just trying to make a play. And that's kind of the worst thing that have happened to you as a teammate. You take out and end the season of one of your fellow brothers. And that's what the NFL still is. Like, it's not one of those things that you just witness somebody that you play with get injured. You witness one of your brothers get injured. When you are on the team, everybody that you play with, at least for that season, is your brother. It's a family. That's how that's how you have a good chemistry. Winning football teams look at each other as brothers. So when one person gets injured and they're in severe pain and their leg gets snapped in half, of course they're going to break down. And there's no way that you can look at a scene like that and not have some kind of emotions. And it's kind of hard to snap back after that. I remember right after the ambulance came and got my guy off the ground, stretched him out, and he's off to the hospital. Right after the ambulance leaves off the field, my head coach blows a whistle. And he's like, all right, water break, and we're back at it. And me and all of the other freshmen and a few of the other upperclassmen, we're looking at the coach like, what do you mean? After this water break, we're right back to practice. How the hell are we supposed to practice after we just seen something like that? I just seen my homie's kneecap pop out of place and end up being on the right side of his doggone leg. You mean to tell me it's right back to business after that? Hey, man, that and the way that he broke it down to us, because he saw the look that we had on our face. So after we got water, before we started practice up again, he kind of spent like 5-10 minutes breaking down, because this was the start of fall camp in high school. You normally get your pass like last week, July, and the first 2 weeks of August leading up to the start of school. You head in and you're playing in pads. And he took that moment to break down, hey, like, when you play this game, there's a chance that you could lose your life doing this. There's a chance that you could have an injury so severe happen to you that you might not have to play again. Like, injuries are a part of this sport. And even though they may not happen to you, when they happen to somebody else, the games don't get canceled. You still have to play, and you still have to perform at a high level to win, because overall, what's the point of losing a teammate just to lose the game too? And that's just what comes with playing this sport. It's not nice. It's not pretty. It's really graphic. This is a gladiator sport. And to see Tank Dell get injured like that, it was a really horrific scene. Now, the Texans signed Deontay Johnson, former Steelers, Panthers, and Ravens wide receiver. And I think that this is probably the best pickup they could have made, because Deontay Johnson has a skill set that's a little bit similar to Tank Dell. Really good route runner, really good in the slot. You can line him up outside as well, but he does have an issue with drops, and he has developed a reputation of kind of being a locker room cancer. So we'll see how this goes. Playing with C.J. Stroud, I think, will kind of help Deontay Johnson from a character standpoint, because if you can't get along with C.J. Stroud, then something is just mentally wrong with you. You feel me? C.J. Stroud is a easy individual to root for, an easy guy to get along with. So they bring in Deontay Johnson. I think that's a great pickup, but we'll see how fast he can learn the playbook, and we'll see how fast they can get him involved in the offense, because, man, they need some severe help with the way that offense has struggled these final 2 months of the season, because right now it looks like the Texans, from at least at this moment, they're going to be an easy one-and-done playoff team come playoff time. But the injury to Tank Dell was really horrific. It's just something you see off a horror film. And I texted my homie a few days ago after it happened. I told him, I remember when this same injury happened to you. It's just... Shout out to everybody that's tuned in wherever you're watching, YouTube, X, Facebook. Make sure that you smash that like button. Subscribe to the channel if you're new so you don't miss when we drop new content. My guy David Mazzell says, yeah, that's serious. He also says it's Cooper Rush, the backup that makes plays. Everybody's still talking about Josh Allen versus Lamar. This is an argument that's going to be never ending until the award gets handed out. And even then, people are still going to be arguing over who should win it. I got a few more things I want to talk about before we get up on out of here, before the start of the Monday night game. The Patriots' future is really disturbing, because they hired Gerard Mayo, who, remind you, was put in place to be Bill Belichick's successor, I'm really disturbed about the direction that the Patriots are heading in the future, because you got Gerard Mayo in his first year as the head coach, who was supposed to be the successor to Bill Belichick whenever he decided to retire or get fired. It was put in his contract that he was the next man up. And yet, after one season, there is a lot of smoke around the Patriots potentially moving off him, which is an incredibly irrational decision to make from somebody that you already had in your mind and vetted to be the next man up, and yet you're going to fire him after one season when you knew that this team was not going to be good. Like, what was Robert Kraft in the Patriots front office expecting? You have an inexperienced head coach with one of the worst rosters in the NFL. You already have several injuries to some of your best players also, and you thought that you were going to be better than what you have been. The Patriots currently are 3-12 entering the final 2 weeks of the 2024 regular season, and 7 out of 12 of their losses have been decided by one possession. Their young rookie quarterback, Drake May, is playing exceptionally well. He looks like the answer at quarterback for this franchise, but yet they want to ruin Drake May's development by firing Gerard Mayo and forcing him to have to learn a new system, play under a new head coach in his second season, which is the most important for a young quarterback, because year 2 is when you see that massive jump. Year 1 is just you getting your feet wet. Year 2 is when you really start to establish yourself as that man, as that guy, as the franchise quarterback. That's really when you develop that title. And by firing Gerard Mayo, it seems like they want to bring back Mike Vrabel, who used to play for the Patriots. He played under Bill Belichick. He played for Tom Brady as well. You know, Tom Brady, Bill, they have nothing but great things to say about Mike Vrabel. He had a lot of success as the head coach of the Tennessee Titans, but I feel like Mike Vrabel is a little bit overrated in this sense, because going to the Patriots, where you have a young quarterback with a coach who primarily focuses on the defensive side of the football, Mike Vrabel isn't really perceived to be a defensive-minded coach. He's more perceived as a culture builder, a good locker room guy. But in a situation like this, Mike Vrabel is the last head coach who I would trust to develop my franchise quarterback, because the Patriots' success, how far they goes, hinges on how much Drake May can develop from now to this next season. And when you have to learn a new system, it kind of sets you back in your development. And the only time Mike Vrabel was able to have a competent offense was when he had Arthur Smith as his offensive coordinator. As soon as Arthur Smith dipped for the Atlanta Falcons head coaching job, you saw the Titans offense dip. And that's why he eventually got fired during his last season in Tennessee. And the draft class that the Patriots have brought in from the 2024 draft is absolutely terrible. The only guy that's really making plays is Drake May, and everybody else after him, it's just a complete whiff. And the main guys who have been getting a lot of PT for the Patriots are the guys that Bill Belichick drafted, which is insane for a guy who was out of touch and outdated and sucked at drafting and was a reason for why the roster was as depleted talent-wise as what it is. It's funny how the guys Bill Belichick drafted, Kayshon Boutte, Pop Douglas, turns out to be some of the best players on the Patriots, especially on offense. And these aren't guys that Bill Belichick drafted high. These were like day 3 picks. Pop Douglas, I believe, was like a 6th rounder. Kayshon Boutte, I think he was either a UDFA or a 7th rounder. So the fact that these are the two most reliable weapons on offense kind of shows you that since they made the decision to fire Bill Belichick, they really don't know what direction they're headed, because they don't really know how to drive themselves down the right road per se. Because when you're hiring a guy that you already had set in stone was going to be the successor for Bill Belichick, and then you want to cut bait with him after 1 year because you feel like the team should be better relative to the talent that they have, it just kind of shows how delusional and how out of touch Robert Kraft and the rest of this front office is from reality. Reality was that the best the Patriots were going to be this year was a 7-8 win team this year. And with them playing in 7 close games, you know, if the ball would have bounced in a different direction, they could have had a way better record than what they have now. But regardless, you were never going to contend for the division. You were never going to be a playoff team. Hell, you are never going to have a winning record. You can be a great coach when you have a bottom of the barrel roster. You're only so limited. And they didn't want to rush Drake May, because if you rush his development, you throw him out to the wolves before he's ready, you can further set him back even further. So I think that Gerard Mayo did a really good job of managing the Drake May situation, putting him in at the right time, making a quarterback change at the right time. And he's gotten the most out of this team for the talent that they have. This is probably the second or the worst roster in football. Either you think they're better than the Carolina Panthers, or the Carolina Panthers may be slightly better than them. I would like to say that they're slightly better than the Carolina Panthers, but this is not a good roster. And when you have a defensive-minded coach and you're trying to develop a young quarterback, it's just so easy to derail his development, especially when you're hiring, once again, a new head coach who doesn't even specialize on offense. It would be one thing to go from Gerard Mayo to Ben Johnson, but going from Gerard Mayo to Mike Vrabel, even then, if you get in Mike Vrabel, it's not like Mike Vrabel overachieved every year he was in Tennessee. His last 2 seasons, he had losing records. So, I mean, I really don't get what direction the Patriots want to go. Because you knew that this was going to be a season that you were going to have to take to rebuild. You were going to have to fight through the growing pains. You got a lot of cap space. You got a lot of draft capital. So you would like to believe that if you go into this offseason with Gerard Mayo, you killed the NFL draft, you crush in free agency, you could be one good offseason away from being a playoff contender next year as long as Drake May takes that next step. So why not give Gerard Mayo another year? You know, it's really disturbing the path that the Patriots are heading on, because they look like what the Chicago Bulls have been ever since Michael Jordan retired, which is, you know, nothing but a carcass of history. And it seems like that's what the Patriots are going to be. They're going to be nothing but a ghost of the past. When you think of the Patriots, You don't think of what they are now. You think of what they used to be when they were at their best. You reminisce on the Brady-Belichick dynasty. And I really don't understand why Robert Kraft decided to go on that smear campaign to try to demean everything that Bill Belichick did for him and that organization. He put the Patriots on the map. If it wasn't for Bill Belichick, there would be no Brady. There would be no 6 Super Bowl trophies that Robert Kraft gets to brag about every day he wakes up. You know, the Patriots wouldn't be worth as much now as what they would have been if you never hired Bill Belichick. So I feel like this season is also a little bit of karma for how Robert Kraft tried to crap on Bill Belichick. You know, the energy that you put out, you always get back in return. My mama always told me this. And Robert Kraft is getting back some of that energy because now you just are walking around like a chicken with his head cut off because you really don't know the right direction to go with this team, with this organization. Do you keep the head coach that you had and waiting for so many years, or do you just cut bait with them after one because you feel this team could have been better relative to the talent that you had coming into this year? In the NFL, look, it's always good to get a win, but not all wins are good wins. The Las Vegas Raiders beat the Jacksonville Jaguars this past Sunday, 19-14, earning their 3rd win of the year. And essentially, they just won their right to give away draft positioning to land Shedeur Sanders. So they won the game, but they also won themselves a chance of not getting a franchise quarterback. And that's the biggest thing that the Raiders are missing. They haven't had a franchise quarterback since Rich Gannon 2 decades ago, pretty much. And Derek Carr was good, but I wouldn't have called him a franchise quarterback because he was never a quarterback that you looked at and said, yeah, this could be the guy who could lead us to a Super Bowl. You look at Shedeur Sanders or even Cam Ward, both of these quarterbacks are generational talents, in my opinion. If you get the right head coach in there and you give them the right talent, they could potentially lift you up from poverty, which you've been living in for the last 2 decades. The Raiders haven't been good ever since I came out the womb. So it seems like I'm hating on this team when, in all actuality, I'm just being honest about this franchise that I've grown up seeing, which has not been good. The Raiders have always consistently been one of the worst teams in the NFL every year that I've been watching football. So, of course, I'm going to be a little bit harsh on this team. And the fact that you win your right to go from 2nd in the draft to picking 6 really is a massive blow to the future of this organization. Because you can say, regardless of how things end this season, regardless if Antonio Pierce is back for 2025, regardless if you hire a new head coach, you can still land the franchise quarterback. I'm going to ask you how. Are you going to try to trade up for one? Because you tried to trade up for Jaden Daniels last year, and this is well-sourced, well-documented. All you got to do is get on your phone, go to Google and look up Raiders tried to trade up for quarterback in the 2024 NFL draft, and you will see 3 articles: CBS Sports, the New York Times, and a few other places, well sourced, that said that the Patriots, were unwilling to move on from the 3rd pick. Washington was unwilling to move on from the 2nd pick, and the Raiders were SOL. And then with the Falcons drafting Michael Penix in the top 10, you pretty much had no other serviceable quarterback from last year's draft class to choose from to get your franchise guy, which is why you went best player available and you got blessed with Brock Bowers. But now you're in the same situation going into this offseason by winning this meaningless game than what you were last year, because it hasn't changed. You went into last season not being able to draft the quarterback, and you're going into this offseason in the same predicament. And there's no guarantee that a team that has a top 2 selection is going to want to trade up. And there's no guarantee that even if you are able to get the Patriots and the Jaguars to listen to a trade offer, Somebody might outbid you. How much are you willing to gamble on trying to land your franchise quarterback? You see, if you just would have lost this game like how you should have, because I get it. Antonio Pierce, there's no guarantee that he's going to be around to benefit from the Raiders having a high draft pick. There's no guarantee that he's going to be around for the possibility of maybe having a Cam Ward or a Shedeur Sanders. But, at this point, you had no reason to win this game. What are you playing for? Because if you already know that you're going to get fired, you're pretty much playing just to stick it to the organization. You're saying that I know they're going to fire me, so I'm going to stick it to them and not give them what they want, which is the ability to draft a franchise-changing quarterback. If anything, all this win did for Antonio Pierce is further give the Raiders more reason to fire him as soon as this season is over. Because if he just would have lost this game like he should have, maybe the Raiders would have been like, you know what, you tank like how we wanted you to, so therefore we're not going to fire you. Or maybe they end up breaking them off a little bit of some incentives for losing. But NFL, you are what your record says you are. And the Raiders are one of the worst teams in the NFL. However, they're not the only team that sucks. There are a few others, and they're ahead of the Raiders. And it looks like the Giants are going to be the lock to get Shedeur Sanders. And whoever can get the second pick, whether it be the Titans, the Browns, or whoever wants to trade up, they're going to get Cam Ward. And you're going to be, once again, on the outside looking in, missing on a franchise quarterback. Now, your only chance to land a potential franchise guy at QB is by bringing the bank to Sam Darnold in free agency. He deserves it based off how well he has played this season. Now, is Sam Darnold worth that kind of money? I don't really think so. I kind of feel like Sam Darnold is a little bit of a product of the environment that he's in with the great head coach that knows how to get the most out of quarterbacks. He's throwing to one of the best receiving cores in the league, Jay Jettas, Jordan Addison, and he goes from Minnesota to the Las Vegas Raiders. We know for as good as Sam Darnold's been this year, before this season, he hasn't really been that great. He's been no better than a low-end bridge quarterback at his best, so we could see him revert back to that same level. Remember, the Raiders signed Gardner Minshew in free agency this past offseason, and he played really good for the Indianapolis Colts last year under Shane Steichen in year one. He nearly got them to the playoffs, and we saw how much Gardner Minshew's play dropped off this season compared to how well he played with Indianapolis. So we could say the same thing could happen. Was going to be a surefire thing to work at this level? I'm pretty confident that he would be. Something about Shedeur Sanders with the it factor that he has just makes me believe and have a lot of confidence that he's going to be a really successful quarterback at the next level. And for the Raiders to fumble away the opportunity of being able to drive somebody that could possibly change the trajectory of their franchise, who could possibly make this franchise relevant again, it just took the point out of winning. If anything, you won, but you lost at the same time. Because winning late in the season, these last 3 weeks, does nothing for you, but just hinder your overall goals, which is to eventually be a Super Bowl contender. And to do so, you need a franchise quarterback. And the Raiders don't have that in the division that has 3 of them, and they see them twice in the season as well. And what are you going to have to show for it? Whether you're going to sign Justin Fields in free agency or you're going to sign Sam Darnold, I don't know if that's going to work out. You were best suited to draft the quarterback by holding the Raiders have found new ways to lose all season long. With the way they lost to Kansas City, I thought at this point they probably were tanking, but it just turns out this team is just that bad. You held Jacksonville because now they could be a lot closer to getting Travis Hunter. Or maybe they could use their pick to trade down for another team to surpass you and get a quarterback. Because who knows how aggressive Tom Telesco is going to be at trying to get a quarterback, because they were trying to get one last offseason and they failed. And the same thing could happen this offseason. You could be in the same situation that you were last year. So the Raiders just gave away their opportunity to get Shedeur Sanders. It's really disappointing because a lot of you Raiders fans out there had the Tank for Shedeur posters out, and yet it looks like it's time to just throw him in the trash because it looks like he's going to be a Giant, a Brown, a Titan, whoever else, because it doesn't look like. I got one more thing I want to talk about before I get up on out of here. Carolina Panthers fans finally have a reason to be optimistic and hopeful about the future of this franchise because they just ended the Arizona Cardinals season and they've been a really tough out the last 2 months. Ever since they went back to Bryce Young, he's been playing like how you expect the quarterback to play who you draft first overall. He was really good against the Eagles and the Chiefs. He was going toe-to-toe with Patrick Mahomes, by the way. They had to win that game by a field goal. He was really good against the Bucs. And he was really good in their wins, not just against Arizona, but against the Giants and the Saints. He's been what he was supposed to be, which is an elite point guard, an elite game manager. That's how Bryce Young has played during the final 2 months this season for Carolina. He's not lining the stat sheet up, although he did have a 3-touchdown performance in the Panthers win over Arizona. But Bryce Young has been really good at getting the ball out of his hand. It looks like the Panthers finally have their franchise quarterback. And now that you have a franchise quarterback, it makes it more easier for you to continue to improve this team because now you don't have to start stressing about, okay, do we need to draft Shedeur? Do we need to draft Cam Ward? Because now you know that you have that answer at quarterback. Now you just have to build around them. If Bryce Young is balling out with all of these random wide receivers, free agency, if you go after T. Higgins, he's on defense, you could be a playoff team, watch these games and not just cheering for Bryce to grow and improve and for the team to improve, but around this same time next year, you could actually be watching games as a Panthers fan where you're rooting because Dave Canales, look, I trusted Dave Canales more than Raheem Morris, and I still do trust Dave Canales more than Raheem Morris. Y'all see how ugly things are transpiring with the Atlanta Falcons. You know, they had to just go from Kirk Cousins, a guy who they invested over $100 million in, for a rookie quarterback who they drafted in the top 10 because they had concerns about Kirk Cousins. So I believed in Dave Canales based off his track record, based off him being able to revive, finally living up to his name as the quarterback whisperer. Now, although it was a little bit unideal how he had to go about handling the development of Bryce Young, having to pull him and sit him for a couple of games, but hey, it worked. You know, Bryce Young looks like the version of him that we saw win the Heisman at Bama. We now are starting to understand NFL draft. Going into this offseason, you cut a few guys and you have a total of 9 draft picks. So based off the money that you're going to have to spend in free agency and all of the draft capital that you have, this team should easily be able to be a fringe playoff team next season. I don't see how they can't be a potential contender for this division because the Buccaneers, I don't know about them. You feel me? Like, I'm always going to be skeptical about the Buccaneers because I don't really like Todd Bowles that much as a coach. I don't have nothing against them, but it's just the Saints are going to be down for a while due to their cap situation. And then you got the Falcons. We don't really know what's going to happen with them. If Michael Penix is the quarterback that most Falcons fans believe he can be, then they'll be straight. But even then, you can have a good quarterback, but if you just have poor coaching, then it can hold you back. So the Carolina Panthers right now, you got a lot to be excited about if you're a fan of this franchise for the first time in about 6 years because this team has shown growth. They've improved. They've been competitive. And now with the good offseason, now that you know that you have a franchise quarterback, you need to surround him with the pieces necessary. Things that he needs to improve on was a reason to be optimistic again. Now you got a reason to go to Panthers games. Although you're not playing for nothing, you're playing to see Bryce Young develop. You're playing for the future. You're playing to have optimism, to have a new hope in a sense. And that's what the Panthers have given their fans, to keep my hands out of the cookie jar And, with the new mindset that he has, it kind of has trickled down to the rest of this franchise. And there's a new vibe in Carolina. There's a new culture that's being set in place by Dave Canales. This man was able to be responsible for two of the biggest quarterback resurgences that we've seen in the NFL over the last decade. So the Carolina Panthers, to me, not only are they turning a corner, but their future looks insanely bright for what this team could be next season. This is it for this episode of the JT Sports Podcast. I appreciate you guys for tuning in. If you enjoy, make sure that you smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, hit that bell icon so you don't miss when we drop new content. Remember, you can find us wherever you get your podcast from: Apple, Spotify, Amazon, the JT Sports